I'm actually kind of surprised we were able to.
I can yammer on with the best of them.
Yeah, you can. That's for sure.
I'm like the juggernaut bitch of talking. Like once you get me yapping, it's hard for me to stop.
Yeah, no, I wanted to get out of your way. I didn't know I could, contribute much of anything in that last discussion. But
This is why I don't do research, because it'll take me out of the moment. It's like, oh, I'm in the moment. Okay, just here's a million words. This is the internet's worst gaming podcast. I'm your host, Loki Jarson. Over there is Joe Stizzy. Say hi, Stizzy.
Hi, I'm over here.
It's been kind of a slow week, for video game news. Let's just real quick headlines. They're planning to make a Beyond Two Souls TV show with Ellen/Elliot Page producing.
I couldn't believe that. I had actually forgotten that until you brought it up, and that's I don't. Okay, well, you and I.
Now,
go ahead. Sorry.
Hold on. Before we even do that, will that actually happen? Because another thing got announced a while back. For years, the Sleeping Dogs movie was in production hell. Then they officially canceled it, and then your boy Simu Liu started making waves. He's like, "No, I'm working with the production companies to get the rights so we can really make the movie for real." I don't think either of these movies happen.
I hope not, and I really hope the Sleeping Dogs one doesn't happen either, because I saw that Simu Liu had. Oh my goodness, it'd been one thing if Donnie Yen had made it. I wouldn't have expected to live up to the game, but it definitely would have been better than any project spearheaded by Simu Liu, of all people.
Allegedly, he says he doesn't want to star in it. He's just like working with production, and I'm like, okay.
I don't know. I don't think I believe that, honestly. He is vain and arrogant enough where he would be. I could see him maybe starting off that way, but then he's like that one director that got so pissed off and just put himself in the script. And just
that's a lot of people. You're gonna have to narrow that down.
Well, yeah, true. Yeah,
Quentin Tarantino, M. Night Shyamalan, Justin Baldoni, a lot of them do it.
But like maybe I could see Simu Liu making himself a big role, like this. Maybe not the star, sure. But co-star. Maybe as Jackie. Who knows?
At least he's vaguely Chinese. I mean, he's Canadian actually, but he's of Chinese descent. Ellen Page technically, legally, doesn't exist anymore. So I'm presuming Elliot can't be in the Beyond Two Souls movie. I don't think Willem Dafoe will be in it, even though he was in the game.
I was going to say earlier, you and I both really dislike video game adaptations because they're garbage for the most part. And I really don't understand this trend of adapting or attempting to adapt these games that are essentially movies, like these David Cage games. You can go on YouTube and watch the cutscenes, and that's pretty much the game. You can get the full experience just from watching a playthrough.
There are a few branching narrative stuff, but all of David Cage's games are largely cinematic. They're story driven and character driven. They're not really gameplay driven. I liked Beyond Two Souls. I didn't like it as much as Heavy Rain, but it's too long to be. Well, I guess that's why I try to make it a TV show. It's like, whose fault is this? Is it Mario Brothers, the Super Mario Brothers cartoon movie that made $1 billion? Is that why the Sonic movies? Is that why we're getting so much shit? The Fallout show. I hate all of it.
It's probably several things. Those would probably are a factor, but I would also say just streaming. All these different studios think they have a whole new avenue to reach a bigger audience, you know, at a different platform. Plus the fact that Hollywood is just creatively bankrupt and they're looking at everything and anything for ideas. And it's natural that an industry as big as video games, which is bigger than Hollywood, would attract all these locusts in adapting these stories.
Um, Speaking of dumb things, Sony, our favorite company, they had a couple of things. They had Jim Ryan retired. They had two interim CEOs basically. Now they've got a new guy taking over the whole thing called Hideaki Nishino, who's been there for 25 years. He's the new president and CEO. Now, this does not mean the two people who were are being demoted. That's going around. They're not demoted. Holst is still the CEO of Business Group, and that other guy, whose name is not in this article for some ass reason, Totoki, will step down as president. He is being demoted, but Holst is not. And that's more important because Holst is the creative part of this shit. The president, you know, the CEO doesn't make creative decisions. Holt at the studio business group decides, okay, we're spending this much money on this project. That's a big deal.
For sure. And like you said, those Holst and that Totoki guy, they were just serving in an interim capacity. Totoki he's financial guy mostly. I can't remember if he's CFO.
Yeah, he was running the hardware bit of Sony. They came up with the second VR headset and the Portal 2, all that crap.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So, yeah, we all knew that their positions weren't going to be final and that they would find somebody. I've never heard of this guy. If I had, I forgot, but he is definitely a veteran in Sony itself. He is. Hopefully he'll be based in Japan as far as I know. Every article I've read didn't say whether, you know, he'll be in the studio in Japan or California. Hopefully it's the former, and hopefully that's, you know, kind of, I hope he'll sort of shoot down all these sort of, you know, what I would deem Western studio ideas, like all these live service games, and they've started to, you know, tick them off one at a time, but
yeah, this is clearly a business decision because, like, we've lost a fuckload of money on live service stuff. Let's stop doing that. Now, the part two of that is the content of the games themselves, which we won't get too much into here. But I'm wondering, I don't think, my cynical self, that this will change the kinds of games Sony makes, narratively, character-wise. You know what I mean?
oh, for sure. I wouldn't expect too much of a change anyways, and nothing I've read would suggest otherwise. I don't know much about this guy. Like I said, he didn't, in his acceptance speech, or whatever you want to call it, he didn't, you know, specify any sort of new direction or even, you know, current direction, but you have to assume that they're just going to stay the course as they are now, and that he's not going to shake things up too much, which is kind of a shame because Sony needs some shaking up.
Second Sony news of the three I have on deck for you is, you know how every month they've been adding PS Plus games? First of all, so far they've been shit. Because in January they said, hey, we're going to give you Suicide Squad. And in February they say, hey, we'll give you Payday 3. It's like, people didn't get these games when they were new. Why would they want them when they're free and old? And it's like, the numbers for Suicide Squad did not go up, by the way.
Shocker.
And you actually did play Payday 3, right? I didn't bother.
I did, yeah. It came with my GameFly when I was still subscribed to it, and the first thing, and I think I sent you a screenshot, or I can't remember if I did, but the first thing you see when you log in, when you boot up the game, Payday 3, is you have to, it's a username box and a password box, like you're signing into some freaking computer app or something, and you gotta log on to your whatever their, I can't remember the type of account. Who published that game? Who published this Payday?
Shit, I don't remember. Look it up.
Anyway, but yeah, you essentially have to sign in even on console.
Starbreeze.
Yeah, that might have been, yeah. And I thought, geez, this is a sad state here. on this, but the game itself was it was just it was bad. I didn't see any noticeable improvement from the second game. So I mean, it's fine, but it's definitely every title seems like a lateral move. There doesn't seem to be any big shakeup or improvement on the formula. So it just, and if you're not playing with anybody, if you're playing with bots, it gets really tedious, and you're doing everything by yourself. But even playing with other people is still a gamble, and you don't know if you're going to get a good cooperative teammate, or if you're going to get a guy that just sabotages you the whole time and is trolling and doing dumb shit.
They had like major server issues at launch. I remember this game being like, I use this phrase lightly, review bombed when it launched because of all the internet problems people had with it.
Right? Yeah, I didn't even mention that. It was, and I think that was mostly on the PC side, but I think that's where most of their customers were. So, but there were issues on every platform that they had, and that did them no favors, and it killed any little enthusiasm that people would have had for the game. It was not a great one.
But hey, now you can get it on PS Plus. Isn't that great? And so happy you pay for that service.
Woohoo!
What was the other Sony thing? Shit, lost it. I don't usually prepare stuff, I just scroll and read.
Yeah, we're very off the cuff this week. I've been busy with the real life stuff, and like you said, there hasn't been much going on this past week.
I have not been busy with real life stuff at all. I've only been playing video games.
Well, that is your real life stuff, so.
There's some other. Oh, of course, the Forza thing. Yeah, we should probably address that. So, in Microsoft's goal to dominate the future of the gaming industry, they're setting stones down, right? I said this somewhere else, but I want to lay it down here and then circle back to it later. Xbox lost the console war, but they've already won the digital war. They've set themselves for the future of digital distribution, and they are far fucking ahead of Sony and Nintendo on that. So more games, basically. You say, oh, Phil Spencer lied. Phil Spencer's not in charge of Xbox. He's not in charge of Microsoft. Satya Nadella is like, how do we make the most money? Well, we got to put our games on more things. And people say that'll never work. Really? Because they just announced Forza Horizon 5. In my opinion, the worst Forza Horizon game is going to PS5 later this year. It'll probably be $60 or $70 as opposed to the $15 a month you pay for Game Pass. So many people on the Sony fanboy side on X, for whatever that matters, are so happy and so excited to pay $60 or $70 for a racer. But what's Sony's racer called? Gran Turismo? What about Gran Turismo? Who cares? Fuck Gran Turismo. We don't need it.
I need it. Well, I don't need it. I haven't played like the past 3 of them, but it does seem kind of weird. It's almost like, yeah, they're bringing in new competition for their own proprietary racing game. So
Yes.
I'm not sure if it's, and as far as a fanboy standpoint, I don't see why they'd be excited. Just like maybe another Xbox scalp, so to speak. I don't really get the the hype around that.
Yeah, this isn't coming on like PS Plus. You have to pay full price for this game. Mm-hmm. And I don't know this. It'll be a ways off. I do not think they're manufacturing discs for this, by the way.
Well, it's not even the newest Forza, is it?
It's not the newest Forza. It's the newest Forza Horizon. There are two different ones. Forza Horizon is the arcade racer, and Forza Motorsport is the sim racer.
That's right. Yeah, I've never been big into it. I know you're a fan of some of them.
I've played them all. Yes, up until what's astonishing is the last 2 of those series have both sucked major dick. Horizon 5 is the worst Horizon, and Motorsport number 8 is the worst Motorsport one. So I wouldn't be surprised if that one comes over too. Why the fuck not?
I don't know what it is about the racing game genre, but every franchise just seems to go in stages of suck. Like they can't. It's very rare they have a bad game and then they'll follow it up by a really great game. It's usually 2 bad games in a row, and then they'll have to go to the drawing board and figure things out.
Ubisoft actually made the better Horizon game. They made the Crew Motorsport, and that's They're straight up copying Forza Horizon, but they do a better job than Horizon 5 did. Horizon 5 takes place in Mexico. There are too many things where you're not just driving a car. You're not like walking around, but there's a lot of like story shit where you have to, you and an NPC next to you are like driving to something and learning about the history of Mexican culture and all this horseshit. And because it's made by a studio it's not in Mexico, they do my favorite fucking thing every Mexican does. Stizzy, you know this from knowing me. Listeners may not understand based on my name and how I speak, but I'm actually Mexican. I've lived in Texas my entire life. My parents are Mexican, my grandparents are Mexican, my great-grandparents are Mexican, okay? But I was born here, so calm your tits.
This is news to me, folks.
Every fucking thing in media that has Spanish has people talk like this, and then un palabra switch to Spanish for no fucking reason.
It is one of your biggest
Una palabra
pet
de
peeves.
español. Eras todo. And then we go back to English. All the fucking time. They did it in the goddamn Spider-Man game. Every other sentence in Forza Horizon has some guy speaking English. Una palabra en español. And then we go back to English. I hate it. Nobody here talks like that. Stop it. You fucking racist people who make this shit. This isn't representation.
You might have been one of the few people that was genuinely happy that Jackie died so early in Cyberpunk 2077. Because he did that all the time. It's like every other sentence.
I have how many years have I been bringing this up? Seriously, like 10, 20?
You've been banging the drum for a long time, and I get you. It's very strange because when you're playing a game with like a German character, they're usually not doing that either. They're usually speaking German. Now, if they're talking to someone that is an English speaker, they may switch to it if they know it. But yeah, Spanish is one of, if not the only language where that seems to be a really common trend in media.
But yeah, if it like someone else does it in another language, you're gonna have that heavy accent. So you have a lot of people who talk like this in Mexico, but nobody suddenly switches to Mexican for una palabra. Nobody does for one word, by the way. I've been saying palabra as word, by the way, in case anyone doesn't understand Spanish. But helpfully, Forza Horizon puts subtitles, so you'll know the one word that they say.
I love that when games do that. It's like when you don't need subtitles for any, like for a couple sentences, and then all of a sudden a subtitle sentence will pop up, and it's like, why does that come up? Oh, it's because they say a Spanish word.
Unironically, media has now become all according to Kikaku.
Oh, of course, yes. Unironically,
Yes. Anyways, that's not the reason Forza Horizon 5 is the worst game, but just be aware that it takes place in Mexico. They just give you too much. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say you never hear like a Japanese speaker intertwining English and Japanese unless they were doing it to make fun of weebs or something like that, or Westerner.
It just spends a lot of time not doing its strengths. Like if you go back to Forza 2 and Horizon 2 and 3 and 4, I think 3 was kind of the peak. But 5, they're just like, I don't know, they give you too much shit to do. This is like busy work, annoying stuff that isn't racing specifically. I'm specifically calling that out. It's more like checkpointing. It's like, hey, go to this place and try to find this rock formation using the camera. It's like, okay, do these, twists and turns, do this fucking drifting thing. But it's like, this was a racing game once upon a time. Can we get back to that? Oh, also, of course, it does something that a few other racing games have done. Forza Horizon started this shit. I wish they'd end it. It's in a bunch of games. Avatars. You make a person. You never play as this person. It's in the Crew Motorfest as well. You never play as this person, but you create a person. You give them hair. You give them clothes. You give them pronouns. You give them a name, and all this stupid shit. But you drive a car.
Right, so you're not going to see him most of the time anyways. I don't think my favorite racers, I don't even think you can see the racer in them. Maybe their silhouette, but that's about it. I just assume it's me. I assume it's a man because men are better drivers. So.
Not on average, but I could name some outliers. That lady who died not too long. Never mind. Anyways, more Xbox games, as we alluded to in our last show, will be coming to PlayStation. And then, who was it? True Trophies? Yeah, they had an article today as of a recording. It's like, here's all the games coming to PlayStation 5 this year. And I did a little control function. It's like, okay, console exclusive. One return. Baby Steps. A joke game. Where you play, you may have seen this trailer, where you play as like a jelly man who you have to, it's one of those shit games like the ones that are just for streamers, like Only Up or the Chain Together, where you're like a wiggle person, and it's like Quap started this. Have you ever heard of Quap?
I've heard in passing, yeah, but I know the type of game you're talking about.
Yeah. That's the console exclusive coming to PS5 this year.
That might be a topic for another show, is these garbage games that are, like you said, tailored to streamers, and it's like all they count. They making these games just to get reaction from a big time streamer, or so
Yes.
they can get in the spotlight that way and sell copies. But another time. Yeah.
My point is, like, Xbox is making all of Sony's games. That's where we've hit. And somehow, Stizzy, this is a win for Sony and a loss for Microsoft.
According to online accounts, you mean? Or?
Of course, yes. Not the companies themselves.
Yeah. It's so crazy, because you're right. Xbox is, they're sitting pretty they're sitting pretty from where they are, as far as the kind of the future of gaming, or at least the direction they're trying to nudge it in, where they've cut down on physical. I think that was another story this past week. Might have been the previous week, but there was a report, like, since 2020, I can't remember the percentage, but it's like 20 or 30% fewer physical media being made. And I think that's not even just games, it's Blu-rays as well. So physical media is definitely taking a hit the last 4 or 5 years here.
But this is part of the... I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. I'm telling you it is. Every company wants to go all digital. Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, anyone who makes movies. They all want to do digital. They all want to do streaming. If you're a TV or movie company, and you're fucking retarded if you think you want to do that, because you'll lose your ass. But as far as video games, like, yeah, they don't want to make discs anymore. Everything needs to be digital. We can rail against that, but that's what's happening. Nothing we as consumers can do.
Well, I can tell you personally, I think it's a bad thing, just simply because I'm going to count on a physical disc keeping in better condition than I'll count on a studio or a streaming service allowing me the rights to watch a digital purchase. Because we've seen time and time again, they can just take that away whenever they want to.
Yes.
And so I'm going to desperately cling on to physical media for as long as I can. And I'm not saying I don't buy digital. It's extremely convenient. That's why it's becoming so popular these days. And it's so funny, because if Sony wasn't so ready and willing to give away all their exclusives, they could have won the console war outright. And it could have just been like Microsoft goes to all digital and they start distributing their IPs to different platforms, and then Sony just has their own deal. They keep making their PlayStations, PS6, PS7, and keep churning out exclusives and making a pretty penny there. And I think there would have been some sort of equilibrium in the industry. But now Sony, they're just bending over backwards to give away all their games. Yeah.
The two biggest, like, I don't know how to put this in a way. I'm just saying it. It's like Microsoft is doing its best to stop spending money and figure out ways to make more of it. Sony, hopefully with this new CEO shakeup, is going to find a way to stop losing money, wasting money. Sony is wasting money not just on live service shit, but and incredibly polarizing stuff, but TV and movies. Like that Beyond Two Souls thing is a Sony thing. That was not on Microsoft stuff. So that's gonna be from them. The stupid Last of Us TV show, the, uh, the fucking God of War TV show, 1,000 things. They're trying out movies and TV shows. It's like, fucking stop it. Make games. Where are all your fucking games?
They have completely abandoned what took them to the top during the PS4 generation, where, and they had some help from Microsoft, especially that disastrous Xbox One reveal.
Yes, of course.
When they wanted to make it a media machine, but they completely abandoned, Sony did, what made them great in the first place, in favor of, like you said, movie adaptations, trying to get account numbers as high as possible, it's just all to appease shareholders, it seems like, instead of actually making games and making a product that people will buy and has made you so successful in the past.
Another dumb Sony thing I just remembered. You know those themes when you boot up your PS5? It's like, oh, you can have a theme from PlayStation 1, 2, 3, or 4. The good old days. That's gone now. They took those away. We might. They had a fucking post. Oh my god, go read that post on X. Where they say, oh, we might bring those back in the future thanks to your feedback. It's like, fucking leave them. What is the problem? Why do they need to be limited time? And everyone under the sun says, oh, so you can charge for them. And that's 1,000% what they're going to do. Because they're fucking stupid.
Absolutely, and it wouldn't shock me if they just flat out forgot that they had left those up for so long. Because when they first became available, I think they only said it's like for very limited time. And when you see that, you think like maybe a month or something like that. But these were up almost like 3 months, something like that.
Yeah.
And every now and then some idiot would remind them, and people would tell them to shut up. It's like the kid reminding the teacher that we had homework.
You didn't give us homework, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, but they are 100% going to bring them back just to charge them, and I won't be buying them. I really like them, but I'm not going to support that kind of scummy tactic.
It is so astonishing that like basic shit that was on the PS4 at launch is still not on the PS5. 5 fucking years into this cycle.
Well, and yeah, with the themes, they get, that's an opportunity. I mean, that's just goodwill with the community, and they just completely squandered it. And you're right. There's still stuff you can do on your PS4 you still can't do on your PS5, and it's probably not coming. They're probably not even just. They're working on the PS6 now. With what games, I don't know. Have there been 100 PS5 exclusive games?
No, not even close. No way. Because here's the other thing. I put caveats for that, Stiz. When they actually get a PS5 exclusive, wait a while, it's not. And I'm not even talking about PC. I'm talking about PS4. They're still fucking making PlayStation 4 games.
Right. What are we gonna? They're gonna announce the PS6, and then it's gonna come out 2-3 years from now, and they're gonna still be making games for the 4. We're gonna have like 3 generations of games, different cross-platform games being made.
But I'm talking about like incentive. What's the incentive to get to the next thing if you're still making the previous thing? I'm not going through a buyer's remorse here with any of my shit because I played way too much. But there's got to be enough customers out there who bought this fucking hunk of plastic and then said, oh yeah, you want to get the PS Pro or PS5 Pro for $800? Which means, by the way, the 6 has to be near 1,000. It's like, why would I keep going in this life system when all you're giving me is stuff from last gen? Or you're like Naughty Dog and all the others who just keep remastering your same shit. It's unbearably frustrating the way they've been doing business this last 5 years.
The answer for me personally, there's been no incentive to. Well, I'm not gonna sit here and also say that I regret buying the PS5 or PS5 games, but if there was if they cross-platform with the PS4, I would probably most of the time I would get the PS4 because it usually came with a PS5 upgrade. So yes. A lot of times I'd be saving money in that case. So of course I would go with the PS4 version and just upgrade it.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like, yeah, I mean, I look at my shelf and I got one stack that has a lot of PS5 games, but a lot of those were also on the PS4 as well, or on PC now. So
It is disingenuous of me to say, oh, PS5 has no games. It's kind of a meme. But what I'm saying for it, I mean like system sellers and reasons to buy this thing. And if you're already saying, oh, we're working on the hardware for the 6, it's like fucking none, trust me, none of your customers want to hear about that. We want to hear about the next software you're making. But the next software you're making is Intergalactic and Ghost of Yotei, which are like, dude, the just the behind the scenes of those don't give me any faith that the games will be good.
no, I'm definitely looking at those closely as the release dates come up, and we hear more and more about the development. Because you're right, it hasn't been encouraging, and it's God, it's just so crazy. We've talked about this before, but and it's Sony has always, it seems like the past 2-3 decades, maybe not that long, but past decade or two, they just been bemoaning the fact that, oh no, we don't have any really big franchises that are just faces of the company or the console and whatnot. I'm thinking, well, you're fucking giving them all away. You're putting all these other. You have Crash Bandicoot, you got God of War, Kratos, you got Infamous, you got fucking, was Sly Cooper on PlayStation?
Yes, yes.
But you know they got Astrobot, not my cup of tea, but Astrobot, the yarn guy. They have plenty of unique franchises, but yeah, they just keep putting them on PC and probably soon enough Xbox. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm waiting for the shoe to drop. People are like, "Oh, Xbox is going third party." It's like, bro, you think Sony's not going to put stuff on Xbox? You're crazy. They're already putting on PC. We've already talked before on the show about, the viability. I know you're against this idea, but the viability of putting something on PC years later, like Rise of Ronin just now coming out. But it's we're in the better than nothing era of media, which is fucking horrendous. But that's where we are. Where recoup losses is better than not trying at all, I guess. Now, I don't think that's a good thing to do. I think Sony will do what Microsoft eventually has been. Excuse me, let me restart that sentence. Sony will eventually do what Microsoft has been doing, which is day and date. You want people to play Intergalactic and Ghost of Yotei? Put them on your fucking PS Plus. You can put them on the highest tier. You have to pay the most amount of money per month to play them, but I think it'll happen.
You very well could be right, and I do think if they did that, that they would lose even more supporters than they do now. And if they came with a PS6, I mean, they're still going to sell copies, but they've already come out and saying that the PS5 has not met their expectations and not sold as many as the 4. Yeah, well, it's thanks Captain Obvious for the statement, but you're right. If the PS6 is $1,000 and there's no what you call a console seller to even move, first off, I don't think there's any game I would buy. I would pay $1,000 for a console just to play. That's just insanity just to even think that. But that's unfortunately the world we're living in, and this is kind of might be out of the scope of this discussion, but it might just be another instance where it's just indicative of just seems like the rot that's sort of setting in with a lot of Western media, and video games have not been saved from that. Now there's signs that things could be going up, but it's a lot of it's just sort of kind of putting band-aids over bullet wounds still at this point. So
and by the way, I just want to make it clear, I'm not pulling that $1,000 out of my ass. I'm doing trajectory. So the PlayStation 5 was $500. The PlayStation 5 Pro was $700. But you have to get all the fucking add-ons, like the disc thing. And plus tax in the United States, it's going to put it near $800. Do you think the PS6 won't be $800? You're insane. So all the tchotchkes plus tax is going to put it close to 1,000. Is my point. 900 really. We can do a nice little roundup for sensationalism.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean. There probably won't be 1,000, the number 1,000 printed on the box, but they'll piecemeal all the different accessories and all that garbage. Where even before you bought a game, you're probably paying close to $1,000. It wouldn't shock me whatsoever if it was that much. And it's just another reason why it's looking like Microsoft's going to win this thing without even really doing anything.
They won by losing. They lost the console war and won the digital war.
Now, I mean, the more we go on with this discussion, the more it sounds like we think Sony is a dead company and they're already buried, but
No.
technically they could turn it around. Now, whether they will, we don't know. Like, to go back to what we talked about with the president.
Ubisoft is the only company I think can't turn it around. I think EA can. I think Disney can, in theory. Warner Brothers can, in theory. Sony can, of course. You have the means to do it. It's the willingness that they lack. It's the people at the top, like Jim Ryan and Herman Holst, who make the creative decisions to say, we're going to spend $1 kajillion on Concord. That's where you lose money. When you need this one guy in the boardroom saying, this looks retarded as fuck and gamers aren't going to buy it.
And even like going back to these movie and TV adaptations that probably will ultimately lead to nothing.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Lead to nowhere. Even if they don't come out and you don't lose your ass on what would inevitably be poor viewership or ticket sales, you're still wasting time and money and all sorts of resources that you could have been allocating in, I don't know, maybe funding another studio and trying to get one of these so-called console seller games, or just, building up your library that is exclusive to your content or your console, excuse me. But no, they would rather focus on pet projects still at this time.
We'll cancel live service games. We're turning it around, guys. Oh, but we're not canceling the TV shows or movies we announced.
And they can't afford to have so many fingers and so many different pies. Their company does not have that much money to be able to swim those kind of waters for long.
And by the way, to wrap that up, because I think we've been going a little long on this Sony thing. Sounds like we're shitting on it. Both of us play our PS5 way more than the Xbox or Nintendo. But this isn't just a problem with Sony games. It is a problem with Sony as well. Because do you know what Sony did in 2024, Stiz? They released 3 superhero movies that all lost a shitload of money.
They sure did. They had they still have quite a streak going for them. And I'm trying to, let's see, I know Madam Web. I'm trying to think of them right now. Madam Web. Was Aquaman last year? No, that was the year before.
That's Warner Brothers also.
No, that's Warner Brothers too, but yeah. Yeah, that's how great the Sony movies have been.
Venom 3 and Craven.
Oh, gosh. How could I forget Craven? I never saw it.
Best of luck, Sony. I don't know what the fuck you guys are going to do to turn this around. Mm-hmm. Except put your games on Xbox. That'll save you.
Now, with those superhero movies, those had been in the pipeline for a while, so I mean, hopefully they see how horrendous they did and maybe rethink something. Like, maybe this whole, because even those are very niche heroes. Venom franchise has made money. I don't know what the third one did. Probably not very well. It's mind-boggling. I can't understand it, but they still made some money, so it's understandable that they made some sequels to it. But who thought Craven or Madam Web were a good idea?
Well, because they're Spider-Man adjacent, and they can't make anything with Spider-Man without Marvel's involvement, and they don't want to involve Marvel Disney.
Right, but you know how crazy that sounds, making a Spider-Man project without
it's
Spider-Man.
Fuck, but that's what they do.
Yeah, it's like they think the name of Spider-Man, or like even the hint of being related to Spider-Man is enough to carry a movie. But newsflash, Sony, it's not. Sorry.
Oh yeah, and the Miles Morales animated second movie didn't make money either.
that one probably hurt him a lot. I bet it did, because the first one did very well.
The third one might never be coming out because of delays and change of directors. Anyways, Sony is fucked. But they can turn it around.
Yeah, no. It's not too late. It's not too late. And I'm not saying I have the answers. Like I've said, I don't want their consoles to be just digital game library machines, because, like, I look at my Xbox Series X and I look on my shelf and I don't have a game for the Xbox Series X. It's like, and I don't think a console should be that, but it's kind of what they're turning into, unfortunately. So
I don't think it'll be 2 more years before we can slap a sticker on this PlayStation 5 and it says, "This is an Xbox."
God, I hope not. I still, I like competition, but when your competitors are shooting themselves in the foot, or, you know, one more so than the other, then, yeah, it's easy to see, you know, how they get to this point.
So now that we just told you Sony's basically dead, let's talk about the games we've been playing on PlayStation 5.
Yeah.
You've been on and off playing Black Myth Wukong. I've ignored it largely because it's not so much the Souls thing, it is the giant spider thing. Have you fought that yet?
Yes, I have. There's actually a couple you can fight.
Oh, wonderful.
They're not until later in the game, but there's no arachnophobia mode either, I'm afraid. It's kind of part of who they are as characters, or monsters in this case. But yeah, I beat Black Myth Wukong.
Oh, you actually did beat it?
I did beat it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've actually started a New Game Plus as well, which goes a lot faster, because you got all the upgrades and you can just plow through all the enemies. And
okay, so 2 questions. First one is more important, really. How is this any different from any other Souls-like? And, you know, like, rate it. You know, how good is it?
I think it's really good. In fact, I would probably give it a 9 out of 10 if I had to give it a number. And compared to, like, what makes it a Souls game, I don't know if I talked about this on the show, but I believe I told you off air, is it's not a really big Souls-like kind of game. It's more of a hack and slash. But the camera angle is reminiscent of a Souls game. It's third person. It's right behind the player character. It's center. He's center on the screen. There are shrines, or, you know, what bonfires they would be in Souls-like, that you know, you find throughout the stage, and if you rest at one, it'll reset any enemies that are around. But when you die, you don't lose anything except for, like, the consumables you may have used during the fight or whatnot. But you don't lose experience. You don't lose any currency. There's really, I mean, there's no detriment. It's just, the time, like I said, time and consumables. So you can just keep retrying as much as you want and not worry about, losing souls or experience or anything like that.
So is it, in the air quotes here, too easy?
I think it's a good difficulty level. There's over 100 bosses in the game, so yeah, there are some ones that are pretty breezy. And for the most part, I would say it wasn't as difficult as, say, like Sekiro per se, but I'd say it's like, I mean, if you want to compare it to a Souls, it's like a standard Souls experience. Like, there's some easy bosses, and there's some pretty tough ones too. It's one of these things which I prefer in action games, and, well, actually most games, where I want the final boss to be tough, and the final boss is one of the toughest enemies in the game, so that's always good. I like seeing that. And there's just, like, even for 100 bosses, there's, like, only a handful of reskins in the game, which really surprised me. I was pleasantly surprised, because when I heard that number, I thought there would just be a ton of them, but a majority of the enemies have unique models and move sets, and all that, and like it's yeah, they're really fantastic. And I don't know much about the Journey of the West, but it's basically retelling that, or kind of like takes liberties with the story, I assume. And there's a lot of times where I get lost in the story. I don't know what's going on, and I played it in Chinese because I felt it'd be more authentic there. But yeah, there's some parts where you can understand some characters and their motivations, and maybe go over kind of a brief little history with them, give you a little bit more context. So, but for the most part, you're just kind of just going through mythical China land, I guess it's called, and just beating up enemies and anthropomorphic animal monsters, and it's a ton of fun. It's more fast paced than a Souls game, and the combat is more fleshed out than a Souls game. Maybe for the exception of like Elden Ring with all the ashes, but even then, yeah, there's even like you just have the staff, but you have all these different styles and moves you can learn, and you got spirits you can implement, and they have different abilities and attacks that you can use in your combat play style and whatnot. So it just it adds a ton of variety to it.
I was gonna bring this up earlier. I think I've played more Souls-like games than you have, but I've finished less, and certainly finished less of the main From Software games, like the 2 Lords of the Fallen games and the Surge games, Morbid, and a couple other damn things. Technically, Yuan Sword, but you also you beat what's the puppet game? Lies of Penis, Lies of Pinocchio.
Yes, Lies of Penis. I mean, Lies of P. Yes. Yeah, Lies of P. And that was more akin to a Souls type game. More specifically, I would say probably closer to Bloodborne and the style of play, and even sort of like with the tone, if anything, in the environmental designs and all that. It's very sort of somber, and it's actually that game also has some really like beautiful set pieces and some really interesting bosses that are, and that's another one that's a ton of fun. And that's all that Lies of P was probably, I would say, probably was tougher than Black Myth Wukong, but there was a fraction than the number of bosses that Black Myth has.
We briefly alluded to this on our last show about Ninja Gaiden. I certainly have seen this in social media stuff where people who are playing Ninja Gaiden Black 2 and are expecting certain things to happen because they're in other games, and it's like, why can't I do this? I was like, well, technically that wasn't invented yet when this game was made. And people have, I think personally, I hold a long grudge with From Software and all their shit. I think they've kind of poisoned the genre, if it were, of action games. None of the From Software games, or indeed maybe Black Myth is, but stuff like Lies of P, etc., those are RPGs. And Ninja Gaiden is an action game. And we've kind of forgotten what an action game is because so many action games like God of War, etc., have used Souls-like stuffs in their games, and people have forgotten what action games were. That's why we don't see them anymore. That's why Ninja Gaiden 4 was kind of like a breath of fresh air. It's like, oh, finally, something fucking different.
It sure was, and for clarity, From Software didn't hold a gun up to any of these studios and say, you need to duplicate my process. These game studios
Neither
were just
did Fortnite.
They were just riding a wave. Well, Fortnite could just, probably buy out anybody they wanted to now, or Epic Games specifically, but they were just riding the trend of the Souls games, and that's understandable. They were extremely popular, and they're still popular to this day, but you're right. It seemed to reshift the genre that was just kind of begging to be corrected back to what it was, where
hack and slash.
Yeah, that's the core. I mean, that's the core, I think, for most action games. They don't all need to be like that. I think there is a place for Souls-like games. Obviously, they're so popular; they're not going anywhere. But to to compare all action games to Souls, that has bothered me for years, and I'm glad that the Ninja Gaiden games are making a resurgence, and hopefully that'll spin off, even more, actual pure action games, not just RPG lights that we've been getting.
No, again, I've mentioned this before. I'm fucking terrible at Ninja Gaiden. Probably worse than I am at your average Souls game because at least the Souls games are and Souls likes are RPGs, so I can vibe with those a little easier. And they have like repeating patterns for bosses and shit. Ninja Gaiden just like, oh you didn't dodge this, fuck you. Oh, you missed the attack, fuck you. It's like, yeah, you're just gonna die now. Deal with it, Ninja. Get better.
Yeah, Ninja Gaiden is all about thinking on your feet, and it's one of the first action games where they kind of wanted you to treat it like a fighting game because Ryu has certain move sets, and there's certain situations where different move types will work better, and it's kind of like all about repetition, like a fighting game would be, where it becomes instinct.
Yeah, the people who made fighting games way back when, the Dead or Alive series.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can definitely see their influence on the 3D Ninja Gaiden games, and that's probably what appealed to me so much because I love the Dead or Alive games too, and I'm really glad we're seeing Ninja Gaiden back into the space again.
And again, even though I'm not good at it, I'm also very happy for its existence, because maybe it will mean, a thousand fingers crossed here, like another Devil May Cry, because I really loved 5. It's like there's more that kind of stuff. Even stuff like, I'm skirting the edge here a little bit, but like Bayonetta or Nier Automata, that kind of thing. Those like almost sort of RPG towing the line.
I mean, I don't mind a little bit, but I would definitely prefer, like I said, the pure action games, and it's understandable why Souls became, so copied, and there were so many different Souls likes. It's because it's a pretty easy formula to follow, at least from a gameplay standpoint. Now, where From Software games shine is usually in the environment and the boss designs. They are some of the greatest in the video game industry, I would say. But Souls likes don't, it just that depends on your concept artist and who's making your art. So,
where they fail the hardest is in storytelling and character work.
I wouldn't even go so far even to call it as storytelling what they do in that game. And Black Myth was, it was kind of that same way, but I would say it was a little bit more forgiving. There's very few side quests. There's a handful of side characters, and they're usually, because the stages are extremely linear, and then they do, in the later worlds, they do get a bit more expansive, but nothing too crazy or anything like that. And if you do just a little bit exploring, you'll find the characters. I only missed out on doing one boss, and I don't know if this was a bug or something intentional, but I was in a separate area, like a secret area, and which there were 3 bosses, and there's 2 bosses before you get to the area boss, and I killed one of the bosses and then the area boss, and then I tried to go back to the other guy because he was an NPC first. He wasn't an actual boss, but you do a quest for him, turn it in, he becomes a boss. But after I beat the area boss, he just disappeared, and so I couldn't fight him, and that was very annoying, and that kept me from actually getting a few trophies from it. So, and I was that really kind of ticked me off. But other than that, it was it's a fun game, and it's a long game too. It took me over 40 hours, but I did almost everything. Like I said, just that one boss, but yeah, I could see why people really, really enjoyed it.
I've been playing another Chinese game made by Japanese people, Dynasty Warriors Origins. I only started playing the Dynasty Warrior games about 8, but I've played everything since, including the Samurai Warrior stuff. The only stuff I don't really do are like the tactical games that come out with them, or like, because I'm just not a big strategy guy. I dabble in strategy games, but I'm not. If given the option, I'll play something else. Origins is really good so far, but you know that story. Speaking of stories that have been told over and over again, the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. So it's got all your favorite characters. It's got your Lu Bu, it's got your Liu Bei, it's got your Cao Cao, it's all his many kids. But this time you star as an amnesiac. You play as an amnesiac. You don't get to like select individual officers to play as anymore. At least in the mode I'm playing. So you just go out there as like I'm a guy with no memory, but I'm real good at fighting. Give me all the weapons. It's like, hey, you want to fight for us? He's like, sure, why not? And that's basically it. Other than that, it follows along the same lines. You go the canon route, shall we say, of what really happened in China, and then you can branch out. It's like, actually, what if this army won the war? But yeah, it's Dynasty Warriors. There's if you've ever seen it, you've seen them all.
Yeah, I've been really intrigued about it, and I'm going to pick it up. I just I have it for real life stuff, but this one did look intriguing. I played the demo of it, and they're going for a bit more of a photorealistic look with the games compared to the more sort of stylized, animated look of the old ones. Because
it's less cartoony anime now, yes.
Yeah. And I started way back in Dynasty Warriors 3, but I've kind of dipped in and out of the series as the years have gone on. But this one, they seem to really emphasize the scope of the battles, especially when it comes to the army sizes. And
oh yeah, they've taken advantage of the technology. They want you to see, like, look how many fucking NPCs we can put on the screen at once. Go beat them all up. They're very proud of that.
And for the little bit I played in the demo, it was pretty darn hectic, because I think or at least it seems like, I'd have to play the old ones, but it seems like they've moved the POV up, just zoomed in a little bit to get that. It's almost like a claustrophobic feel, just like with the massive bodies that you can they just thrust you into.
And then they changed the map where Dynasty Warriors 9, which I really like, but is kind of a mess. That's an open world game, and it is to the detriment of the game because all the character models are hideous. But Origins gives you a world map where you're a giant character and you're walking around like the provinces of China, as if they were tiny. I don't know how to explain this in audio, but you're big and the places you walk are small.
I know what you mean.
We saw this in the trailer for Clair Obscura. It's like you're just a big guy walking around a map.
It's kind of like what they did for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, like that.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the overworld map, such as it is, where you go from place to place.
Can I just say,
silly.
I've never liked that sort of style of overworld map, where you're a giant and you're walking around the world from point to point. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the disconnect between the world map and then actually getting into the game. But yeah.
Well, it all comes from, like, I don't know that Final Fantasy invented this, but it's certainly inspired originally by Final Fantasy. Even going back to the first game where you're in the city, you leave the city, suddenly the city is tiny. You're not necessarily bigger, but you're walking around a map and the city gets smaller and smaller. I don't know what was the first game, maybe one of the Tales games, or what's the thing that came before the Tales games? Where you're in space and there's the medieval Star Ocean. The Star Ocean games, I think, do this too.
Some of the later ones, I think maybe the 3D ones do that, because the first two also had overworlds, but that were inspired like Final Fantasy. But even in those games, you're right about sometimes you go out of town, it's like only half again the size of your character, but the world itself would be pretty big, and you can a lot of it was empty space because that's just the technology back then with these games. But I've never liked the giant avatar on a small world map that look like they could crush a townstead under their foot. So
the other funny thing about that is while you're walking around town, you'll hear people in town just like, this sword is really sharp, and random shit like that. It's like, I hope Liu Bei doesn't betray us. It's like, okay, cool. Thank you for this incidental dialogue.
No one can beat Liu Bei. He's the best.
I heard the freaking bat was hanging around here.
Oh gosh, forgot about that one. But speaking of Lubu, he was also in the demo, and he was actually pretty tough. It took me a few tries to beat him.
Yeah, they fucked with the difficulty a little in this. Because I play video games for fun. I'm playing on the lowest one, and I'm still having a few troubles because your companions aren't like invincible. You need to help them, and they could die very quickly if you don't run to their. It's still the same style of gameplay. You know what I mean? Like if you've ever played one, you go up into this area, you beat up all the Chinamen in that area, take over that spot of land. Then you're gonna move to the next objective, and sometimes your companions, squad mates, whatever you want to call them, soldiers, will split off from you. And they'll be like, "Oh shit, I'm in trouble. I need help over here, please." So you gotta run and go help them before they die and take over the area.
You're right. I actually did fail in the demo one time because I take a very, very hands-off approach when it comes to the Warriors games usually. Like you said, I just like, they'll say, oh yeah, so-and-so's in danger, and I'll be like, hey, he's fine. I'm, doing my thing, so I'm not going to worry. But I did that in the demo, and that person, and he was like a, major character, big enough for when he died, the mission failed, and I was like, oh shit, maybe I actually have to go back and save him. Now, one thing I did like, a feature, I don't know if it's new in Origins or if they've put it in the newer ones, where you can like go back at certain stages during the fight and rewind it.
That's new for Origins. God, I wish I had that in the previous games, because sometimes you're playing one of those big ass maps, 20 minutes, and there's like a fail. You gotta do the whole thing over unless you made an in-game save. But this one's like, okay, let's they auto save at certain points during the battle, and you can go back in time. Maybe it's cheating, whatever. You can go back in time before you went right instead of left, so your companion dies, and it's like, okay, this time I'll go the other way and help him out.
I don't care what you call it. I call it a godsend. I mean, that was a great new little feature, and because some of these maps can take a long time, I remember back in the day, like 4 and Samurai Warriors, I'd spend almost an hour on some of those maps. I mean, they could go on forever, and yeah, you'd have to start all over if you died.
Both Dynasty Warriors and the Japanese version Samurai Warriors love to do this shit of, okay, let's picture in your head a 9-quadrant map, like a tic-tac-toe board, okay? You start at the bottom left, you need to go to the top right. By the time you get to the top right, something bad is happening in the top left, so you need to get over there. On your way there, hey, something's bad happening in the bottom right. You're just all over the fucking place. I don't even know if I spoke over myself there twice. My point is, it can get quite hectic and confusing. It's a battle.
No, and if these games were all the knowledge you had of historical battles, you would think that there were ambushes in every single battle in history, because that's what the Warriors games depict them as. Like, all right, we're finally to the enemy general, we're about to take him down. Oh wait, our forces in the west have been ambushed. You have to go save them. Like, what? I was just over there. Can't they take care of themselves for 5 minutes?
No, that's the crux of this game. Is you got to be everywhere all at once, like the Chinese movie that I never saw.
It really seems to emphasize the micromanagement part of war.
Well, it's I don't want to say realistic, because none of these games are fucking realistic. I mean, nobody really dies in any of these games either, because they're T for T and they're bloodless.
Right. But even if you beat them in battle, more times than not, they'll just be a little cutscene that they're just running off like, I'll get you next time.
We said this in our best of show about Rise of the Ronin and shit like that. But Dynasty Warriors is all about, it's like, oh, you've defeated me, but I'll beat you next time, Gadget. And it's like, what do you mean next time? I beat you. You're dead. It's like, nah, we let him get away. That's stupid. We probably shouldn't do that.
It's usually instances where, like, in the real life battles, obviously those, generals and top name warriors, probably didn't have anything to do with it, but they need to be in the game, and they need to be in the game as units, even if they didn't die in that particular battle or something. So, but it's a quirk of the Muso games for sure.
Yeah, it's part of the charm, I've not gotten anywhere close to it. That game's 100 hours easy. It's a gigantic one.
and this is a, I don't want to go on a tangent or anything, but this is something I just thought of and I'll have to look into. But Samurai Warriors 5, which is the latest Samurai Warriors, took a really drastic, different artistic style, and they went even more sort of stylistically anime-ish, you know, if you want to call it that, aesthetic to their game. And, but, you know, under the hood, it's very much like an old school Warriors game. So I'm kind of surprised Origins went with the, you know, slightly more realistic and, you know, the player controlled character, the amnesiac, like you said. So I wonder if they're kind of going in two different directions for both franchises, or if
maybe, yeah.
There's going to be a Samurai Warriors Origins. Who knows? I'm not sure.
Well, technically, Samurai Warriors 5 was Samurai Warriors Origins because it went back in time to the early days of Nobunaga.
Right, yeah. You get to play as Nobunaga Oda pre-goatee, and it's pretty interesting, yeah.
Yeah, before he had that black guy that was not important at all.
I think he's in the game, and he was on the previous one, too, but he was DLC character then, in both cases.
Yeah, he's not an important guy. So, you know, looking forward here. The other samurai game, jeez, Assassin's Creed Shadows. Sorry to drag you back down into the Ubisoft hell here. That's coming up soon. I don't know if and when we're doing a show. Oh, we'll be till late March, right? Yeah. I forgot they delayed it. We'll probably have a couple of shows before that, so there'll be more bad news. But Ubisoft did close down another fucking studio this week, too, so who knows?
Oh, yeah, did they lay off like 100, 200 employees or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There was another studio, Phoenix Head, I think it was called. Something Phoenix. Closed down.
I don't know.
Yeah, can't remember. It's been a pretty common story, it seems like, last couple, 2-3 years.
Well, stop making bad shit. Like, so many people are like, oh, the game devs layoffs. Oh, everybody's losing their job. Oh, it's so sad. It's like, look, I understand. It's sad when anyone loses their job. As a guy who's been fired 3 times, I understand. Don't make a shit product so people can buy your product. Also, there's such a fucking disconnect. Stizzy, I've worked in business a lot. I don't have an MBA or any of that shit, but getting more into, you know, studying the business of video games, as we talked about in the first part of this episode, I've learned a lot about the difference between management and production, between developers and producers. So developers don't share the cost of making it, so they get paid less, so they're let go first. And people on social media don't fucking understand that developers who program the game are contract workers. They're almost always let go before the game is shipped or just after, because their contract deals don't have back-end deals. They have what's called front-end deals. This is an idea they took from Hollywood. But asshole journalists like Jason Shitshow Shire and Paul I Love the Acolyte Tassie wanted to stir up drama. It's like, oh, all these poor developers losing all their jobs. Oh, it's so sad. It's like, it's standard fucking practice in everything. You just want to pretend like it's a huge deal. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying because the developers don't front the cost to make the game, logically, they don't deserve, in air quotes, the rewards of it.
I don't think a lot of people realize how much reshuffling really goes on in the video game industry and how long it has been going on. Because you're right, that happens all the time. You look at a developer's resume, and they may have worked for like 8 or 9 different studios on different projects at once, you know, and it doesn't mean that they're necessarily bad or that they did a bad job with that product. It's just, like you said, they're mercenaries, you know, they you know, maybe get hired on for a game and later to work on something specific, and then they go on to the next project or something like that. And I know that's the case with a lot of smaller studios, but you know, what constitutes as a small studio these days? Like, I think that Phoenix Head, or whatever it's called, had over 100 employees, so I wouldn't really consider that a small studio. That's a team for a big game project at that point. And you know, the more people that you bring on, to hire full time, or at least for long contract, the higher the stakes get, and the more imperative that is that they make a quality product. So
I'm just saying, like, producers get paid more because they put upfront costs. That's just how it is.
mm-hmm.
If you want to lament about that, say, oh, capitalism bad, all that shit, but that's the way the business works. And it's not, I'm sorry for this background audio, I have a neighbor who's an asshole. And it's not like a new phenomena. I want to take you back to like the early 90s when Capcom and SNK were going at it. What happened was Capcom had a lot of developers, after making like Street Fighter 2, left to SNK to work on Fatal Fury and stuff like that. But if you look at the credits for those games, nobody uses their real name. They all use nicknames.
Mm-hmm.
And because they didn't want you to know who was going where. And that was in the early 90s.
Right. And that's, I wonder if that too might have something a little to do with like the, kind of the Japanese businessman's mindset, and how they're, they might pride themselves in being able to retain a job in one place, and that they may see it as a mark of shame to, to go to different studios and companies in a short span.
We're speaking kind of out of our ass here, but
yeah, like usual.
I've heard this in places that motility in terms of like your job placement is not a thing in Japan. It's like you get a job and that's your job. In America, it's like, okay, what's my next job? Can I get promoted? And that's not necessarily a thing that's looked favorably on in Japan. I'm speaking in very general terms.
Yeah, right. We're dumb Americans, and we're just like you said, talking over our ass about things we've just heard, just sort of in passing as the years have gone by, being in this sphere. But yeah, there's a lot of turnover in the video game industry, and then especially since it's gotten so big. Like I said earlier on the show, it's bigger than Hollywood. It's bigger than the movie industry, and it stands to reason that when there are flops, when there are failures, people are just going to lose their jobs. It's just the way it is.
Now, if you're asking, the obvious question comes after we're told all that. Okay, so when producers put up the money and a game fails, why aren't the producers fired? Or, why don't they take pay cuts? And I'll tell you, great question. I have two things. My only logical conclusion for that would be, well then, who's paying to make the game? Let's say, I'm just making shit up here. Let's say Yves Guillemot says, fuck it, I'm out. I'm done. We're done. We're canceling AC Shadows. Fuck all this shit. I'm out. We're never making any more Ubisoft games. The games still aren't being made. But if they fire the studio, it's like, okay, we cut a little cost. We might be able to afford to make another game.
Right. And a lot of times these producers are not, they're not paying the whole amount out of their own pocket. They'll go out there and they'll get investors investors with really deep pockets to put money into a game or a project. And depending on how smooth talking the producer is, maybe they can just keep going back to that well. But yeah, it's you don't see producers firing themselves too often.
There's one off-reported incident. I think it's very overblown, but Iwata, when he was with Nintendo, do you remember the Wii U basically failed, and Iwata came out and said, this was my fault, I'm taking a pay cut. And he was applauded for this to this day. There was some sort of legal loophole that allowed him to do that and save face. I don't think that was entirely altruistic, but that's the only real instance I can think of where an executive producer or CEO falls on their sword on purpose.
Yes, and that's also pretty common standard practice in Japan. And I'm a little bit more confident in saying that. I've heard plenty of other examples like that, and the opposite's true. If a studio releases a game and it's a big hit and it sells a lot of copies, then a lot of times the heads will, they'll give a gift or a bonus to the developers or people who worked on the project, and Shift Up, who they're Korean technically, but they did that as well. They gave their employees a little bonus and a PS5 to play all those great games on.
Just the one they made, Stellar Blade, not a lot else.
That's all you need.
But yeah, but you know, part of this business stuff is because we're in different countries, and different countries have different laws. So like legally, if you make a game here in America and it fails, and if you're in charge of that studio, you're probably going to be okay, just because of the way things work, tax write-offs. You want to say they're evil, fine, whatever. You can go move to another shittier country. But it's not just the business. We've been talking almost entire episode about the business of video games. But part of the reason business is down for major studios is because the quality of the product they're putting out is so bad. The average customer says, I don't want to pay for this.
That's another thing that I wouldn't be surprised if some of these failing companies maybe move to other countries to try to like Hollywood is doing right now to try to get a tax break or something and save whatever money they can. Try to cut corners at any possible.
Well, I don't want to speak on current events and like politics and geopolitical situations, but Canada is doing a similar thing with their businesses because of stuffs. So they're like, hey, maybe we should leave Canada. So that probably will happen more with video games. Like there are a couple of big Canadian studios like BioWare probably moving out and moving around and shopping other places. But we'll see. Again, it's not where you do business; it's the quality of product you put out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
if the game is great, you'll make money.
And the people making the games. I just want to say, yeah.
Yes, the producers and more than the developers. Yeah. I can't. It's so hard for me to ever blame a programmer for anything, except a technical issue, right? If there's a technical issue to the game, okay, there's a problem with your programmer. If the game is badly written or the character models are hideous, I'm going to blame a producer.
Kind of like what CDPR went through when Cyberpunk came out, because there were a lot of technical issues, mainly on the older consoles, and everybody just didn't know who to point fingers at. Do you point fingers at the programmers, or the team leaders, or the president, or the shareholders? And it was just like, and you could see a lot of people taking sides on whatnot. And
yes.
Hell,
people on the internet fucking love to take the side of the devs. They're like, no, the devs are underpaid, they're overworked. It's like, again, I mentioned those shithole journalists, but they're always taking the sides of the devs.
And I am all for blaming upper management and ownership, because a lot of times they are the problem. But I don't think developers should escape culpability when something goes really wrong. Now, they were able to right the ship, and overall, once you got past, peeled the layers, the glitchiness, that's amazing game, Cyberpunk. So.
That being said, I don't think Witcher 4 will suck because of the programmers and developers working on it. I think it will suck because of the character designers and writers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're absolutely right. It might even... I'd be shocked if it didn't play better than Witcher 3, because Witcher 3, as much as I love it, it's not exactly a stellar gaming experience, just from, like... just swordplay and all that. I mean, it was serviceable, but that was, about the kindest thing I could say about it. So, but yeah, if the people at the top making these bad decisions are there, then it doesn't matter, how many layoffs or how much reshuffling they do. It's still just going to result in the same type of product that's been failing so often lately.
I would even go so far, Stizzy, to argue it doesn't matter how good the game is, because while I like stuff like Life is Strange and Star Wars Outlaws, those games failed. So if the public perception, or rather the quality of the game can't outgrow the public perception of it, your game's going to fail no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, maybe Concord was really fun. I don't know. The 200 people who got to play it never told anyone about it.
I can't. Who knows? It didn't look like it was fun. That's for sure. It could have been different with the controller in the hand, but somehow I doubt it. But it's.
Anyways, that's a.
Yeah.
Good.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah. What people see matters. You can call it shallow, but it killed Concord. So, It's important.
Video games are a fucking visual medium. I'm sorry. You need eyes in order to play them. Sorry, all our blind video game players.
But I hope you're listening, because you got ears, don't
How
you?
the fuck did you find this? You got to click on links.
That'd be amazing. I don't think our blog has Braille on it. But,
Thank you for listening to this extra business class version of the Internet's Worst Gaming Podcast.
yeah, two morons talking business.
Well, I've worked in business and I spend a lot of fucking money on video games, so I know what I want to spend my money on. Like you, for example, have sworn off certain publishers, and you're never going to spend your money on them again. And for me, I'm like, well, you're never getting my new money. I'll buy your game used, so you don't get any of my money. You know what I mean?
Oh, I'll buy games used even from the publishers I've sworn off, because they don't get the money, so that's fine. And there's some games coming out this year where I'm like, I want to play, but I don't know if I want to get it new, so I may wait and get that on the used pile.
On the Game Pass, because everything's coming to Game Pass, including this podcast.
Well, you would know we'd made it then.
This podcast is an Xbox. Thank you so much for listening. Wait, how does that make sense? Thank you so much for listening. You can find me on X at Loki Jarson.
I was going to say, I hope you still are Loki Jarson. You're using the past tense there. But I have been and will be, at least in the God willing, at the Joe Stizzy on X and Joe Stizzy on YouTube.
Did you record any Black Myth?
No, I didn't. And I kind of wish I did, but I felt like since I waited for the physical edition on that one that I sort of missed the window. But it's not like I'm getting a lot of eyeballs anyway, so. But
I'm asking.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get into more here, but in the next few months I'm going to be busy with real life stuff, so it's probably going to be pretty sporadic here and there if I do upload. But,
yeah, so this will probably, we've been turning these out for a while here in January and early February, but this will probably be our last one for a while.
Yeah, I'll be gone for sure next weekend, I mean, but maybe the weekend after might be able to find some time to record a new show. So, hopefully it won't be too long.
Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Yeah, bye.